I'm going to trace the long arc between the character and the catcher in the rye, Holden Caulfield, and Barack Obama, who is still playing the outsider even though he's the president. You see, J.D. Salinger died, and he wrote The Catcher in the Rye. You may not have heard of him, but his book, which was published in 1951, it was written in 1945, is still selling 250,000 copies a year. It's still taught in colleges. And there's a reason for it. A couple of years ago, or a year ago, I actually reviewed The Catcher in the Rye for the Savage Nation, and it wound up today on Breitbart TV, Michael Savage reading from The Catcher in the Rye. It's not just me reading from it. I didn't just read it. I actually would read and stop and analyze what I was saying and why it's so important. And then Drudge posted it, and Breitbart posted it, and we're going to play it for you, the 5-minute piece that I did. And I'm going to trace, as I say, the long arc between the character and the Catcher in the Rye, the immortal teenage protagonist, the twisted, rebellious Holden Caulfield, who was the predecessor of the beatnik of the 50s, then the hippie of the 60s, and then the progressives of today, who continue to see themselves as working against the system or working against the man. And it leads us right up to Barack Obama still playing the outsider even though he's president. What Barack Obama did last night was frightening. I don't know if you actually understood the psychology of Obama last night, but it was, if you actually could understand what he did, forget the individual policy statements that he made. Some of them were so obscure that they have only circulated in underground college publications, what Obama said. The man proposed things that are only proposed in obscure college publications. I think this man has no concept of limitations, either his own or of the government. And as such, Obama places us all in danger. Furthermore, the speech was full of bluster and bombast, unctuous in tone, condescending in spirit. We the people didn't understand health care. We the people didn't understand budgets. We the people don't understand the Supreme Court's decision. We're the idiots, and he's brilliant. The community organizer is brilliant. Brilliant. This was an arrogant and awful demonstration of the ability of a delusional man to blame everyone. Even the left thinks it was muddled. Obama did not have a coherent philosophy. The theme of his speech was, I don't quit. It had nothing to do with America, did it? And that's why, the minute the show ended, I posted my feelings up on Michael Savage, which is very short, and I said more today. Him insulting the Supreme Court in front of the entire world, I don't know if it was a first. I know that Andrew Jackson, I believe, once said to the Supreme Court, now that you have ruled in force, meaning I have the military drop dead. So there's probably a precedent for a president overriding a Supreme Court. But you got to remember that the Supreme Court is an equal branch of government to the presidency. Equal, not inferior to. This tin pot dictator from Chicago thinks that he is the supreme leader and he is superior to other branches of government. The man is a clear and present danger to the survival of this republic, in case you don't know it. Now, any Democrat listening to this show would understand what the Constitution says, separation of powers, not a supreme dictator. So when he attacks the Supreme Court in front of the Congress, and the gang of Democrats stand up behind the Supreme Court members, all of whom sat still, stone-faced, including the liberals, such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she didn't get up and say, thank you, President. She understood what a slap in the face it was to the institution, the Supreme Court. The man, as I told you, is Junior Doc Obama, and he'd like to become a full-blown Papa Doc Obama, and the only people who can stop him are you. The man is a danger. Pelosi is an out-of-control egomaniac. 20% of the American people want health care reform, most of whom are illegal aliens or are going to profit from it directly. 20% of the people really don't know what it means for them, and approximately 60% have said, do not destroy the greatest medical system on earth. And yet Pelosi in a fright wig gets up and says, we're going to do it. We're going to vault over. We're going to parachute in, drop dead people. We don't care. So now how did we get here? How did we wind up with this arrogant adolescent Obama in the presidency? How did this happen? Little did I know that I'd wake up today and read that Catcher in the Rye author J.D. Salinger, would die. He's 91 years old, dies at 91. God bless him. I hope I live that long. Son says he died of natural causes at his home. He lived for decades in self-imposed isolation in a small remote house in Cornish, New Hampshire. And as I say, he wrote The Catcher in the Rye. And I want to show you today the long arc between The Catcher in the Rye, that is Holden Caulfield, and Barack Obama, who is still playing the outsider, who is still playing, in essence, the teenage protagonist, the twisted, rebellious Holden Caulfield in the presidency. From the beatnik to the hippie to the progressive, today on the Savage Nation. And I will play what was posted up on Breitbart and Drudge and michaelsavage.com. You could play it yourself on your computer. But I want to read you a few pieces from The Catcher in the Rye. I still have my edition. It's falling apart. I have a paperback Signet book edition, 50 cents. Not the rap artist who probably has never read a book, but he's done very well indeed, because that's America today. But Salinger wrote the book in 1945, and it was published in 53 by Little Brown and Company. And so, anyway, he writes this book, and it's about this character, this college guy, goes to a prep school, rich kid, and he's kind of alienated. The character is an alienated character, and he doesn't really know what he is and what he wants to be. And I'm going to go to page 57, and he goes to this cheap hotel room in Manhattan. They gave me this very crummy room with nothing to look out of the window at except the other side of the hotel, he writes. I didn't care much. I was too depressed to care whether I had a good view or not. Now, let me pause right there. He said I was too depressed to care whether I had a good view or not. Remember, he wrote this in 1945. This was the first post-war book about an alienated character that I know of. He predated characters in the movies such as Montgomery Clift. Do you understand the characters I'm talking about? The outsider, the guy who was in the undershirt smoking, looking in from the outside. He predated a guy like Frank Sinatra's Italian guy, the little guy who fought until he got killed by the big guy. Remember that character? He played that character. He wrote about them. So he's in a cheap hotel, no view. He says, I don't care. I was too depressed to care whether I had a good view or not. The bellboy that showed me to the room was this very old guy around 65. I'm laughing for a reason. He was even more depressing than the room was. He was one of those bald guys that comb all their hair over from the side to cover up the baldness. I'd rather be bald than do that. Anyway, what a gorgeous job for a guy around 65 years old, carrying people's suitcases and waiting around for a tip. I suppose he wasn't too intelligent or anything, but it was terrible anyway. Now, this is, again, Salinger writing through his character, Holden Caulfield. And the kid now goes on. The character says this. After he left, I looked out the window for a while with my coat on and all. I didn't have anything else to do. You'd be surprised what was going on the other side of the hotel. They didn't even bother to pull their shades down. I saw one guy, a gray-haired, very distinguished-looking guy with only his shorts on, do something you wouldn't believe me if I told you. First, he put his suitcase on the bed. Then he took out all these women's clothes and he put them on. Real women's clothes, silk stockings, high-heeled shoes, brassiere, and one of those corsets with the straps hanging down and all. Then he put on this very tight black evening dress, I swear to God. Then he started walking up and down the room, taking these very small steps, the way a woman does, and smoking a cigarette and looking at himself in the mirror. He was all alone, too, unless somebody was in the bathroom. I couldn't see that much. Then in the window, almost right over his, I saw a man and a woman squirting water out of their mouths at each other. Now, I want to pause right here. This was very, very risky for 1951. You see the topics he touched on through the character, the alienated character? And what was Salinger trying to say through his character, Holden Caulfield? That the kid was mixed up and alienated because society was mixed up and alienated. Has anyone out there ever read Catcher in the Rye, and did it affect you in any way? Just throw out what you remember. Did it change you? It changed me. See, the point is that in many ways, all of my rebellion, all of my early years of rebellion, maybe to this minute, maybe my years on radio, I don't know. I'm still playing Holden Caulfield for all I know. The difference is I'm not president. The difference is I'm smart enough to understand that we can't have somebody who is an entertainer in the presidency. And right now we have an entertainer who's in the presidency. He doesn't even understand the power he has and how he's abusing it and how he's trying to wreck this great republic and its institutions. That's the point I'm trying to make. So, you say, well, why are you doing it? You're trying to sound smart. You're being an intellectual. We don't like it. Do Tea Party stuff. Be a Tea Partier. Just do the stuff. No, that's not why. I'm doing it because, yeah, you can bash Obama all you want, but unless you understand where he came from and how a guy like that could be put into the presidency and the American people could be so hoodwinked, it could happen again. And in order to prevent this from ever happening again, you have to understand who he is, metaphorically, and in order to do that, you have to understand the long arc between a book such as The Catcher in the Rye probably predates him. I can take it back to Baudelaire if you want to go into French literature, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go back to Holden Caulfield and The Catcher in the Rye and lead you right up to Barack Obama still playing the outsider even though he's president. And that's the whole thing. And I am again going to make connections between the long arc that connects the character in The Catcher in the Rye and Barack Obama still playing the outsider, still playing the alienated teenager, even though he is the president. From beatnik to hippie to progressive to the savage nation, I'll be right back.
Savage.